This book holds our birthright.
It tells the story of a group of white separatists waging a race war against the United States government.
We don't advocate any of our members breaking any laws.
But some do.
Jude, you were a producer on this as well, and you have been on several projects lately. And this is a choice role for you, really one of the best. I really enjoyed your performance in here. This character is one, although there are characters in here who are based on real people, he's sort of a compendium of different people, or how did you come up with him?
Zach made a choice, I guess, early on to composite several of the agents, special agents, who were on this case. It was a very smart move. It meant that when we started to really develop the piece, we were able to embellish Husk with backstory and details that better steered the narrative and was able to set him up as a comparison, as a mirror, as a twin almost, sometimes of Matthews. Then as an actor, it was just an extraordinary opportunity to approach a role where you were really able, over a long period, to get into the tiny details of his past and what made him who he was at the beginning of our story. We were very keen that he was carrying the cost of his career, carrying the cost of his successful career, physically and spiritually. I like this idea that, like us, he was a guy who was sort of broken, and he thought like the fight was behind him, and in fact the fight's in front of him.
And so, Zach, how did you come upon this particular case? I'd never heard of it or didn't remember it from 1983.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't heard of it either. I started researching kind of domestic terrorist acts in America and far-right militia groups with one of our other producers, Brian Haas, early on, and it's around 2016, 2017. And through those kind of just reading a lot about Ruby Ridge and Oklahoma City and Timothy McVeigh, found this story that had of Bob Matthews that had actually been very inspirational to Timothy McVeigh, and we optioned the book that we then used as the basis of the for the script. I don't know, Justin was always someone who I've wanted to work with, and with Jurnee, with Nick, with Jude, like we really built those characters together, and the movie really came alive once Justin came on board, and it was an incredibly collaborative thing, which is very rare.
Justin, what was it about this story that appealed to you to decide to dive in? Because every movie is a big commitment. And this story is very intense, but I think really important. So what was it for you?
Well, the script just read in a really exciting way. I sort of read the first 10, 15, 20 pages, and as Zach said, it felt like these really wonderful kind of throwbacks of Sidney Lumet and Willie Friedkin, and then slowly it started to unveil itself throughout the screenplay that, is a domestic terrorist group called The Order, and they're carrying out these kind of chapters in the Turner Diaries to overthrow the government, and then we started working on it, and then January the 6th happened, and I remember distinctly seeing kind of, nooses, like props, hanging outside the Capitol building, and going, oh wow, that's the day of the rope, and then people were sort of cited with the book, and I was going, wow, what is this book? And it has been hiding in the shadows, stealth-like, for years and years. So it was just, it's to be able to kind of have a story that is set in another time and place and have a bit of distance, but at the same time allow it to have a very direct conversation with, the present day. And, as a genre film too, like it's really exciting to be able to kind of work within that genre form and the momentum of that genre, but with really sort of interesting kind of characters that felt very grounded. So it was a number of things, really.
Nicholas, this is a wonderful acting opportunity for you, because I think I told you when I first saw it, I didn't know it was you. I knew you were in the movie, and I kept waiting for you to show up. Right from the look, the hair, and he's frightening, but you give him a three-dimensionality so we can look at him, what happened to this guy, what made him turn, and what made him turn so extreme.
I mean, that's one of the things that, for me, doing the movie, first of all, Zach wrote a brilliant script, but then Justin has such an ability to look at those characters objectively from the outside. And I think it's important when you're playing the characters like that, where untruths becoming fact very quickly. And that's the thing for Bob. When you go back through his life, there were times when we were looking through his childhood and we were like, oh, we'll try and find exactly what the moment was. And it's just kind of this compounding thing that builds and builds emotionally with him. And obviously when you meet him in this story, he's developed this horrible ideology that he's then preying on other people and manipulating them and getting them on side with it in terrible ways. And so it wasn't a character that was fun to play, but I felt safe doing it with all of the people up here because they're all brilliant at what they do and made me feel safe. But it's interesting, I suppose, as an actor to go into that world and try and understand it. And I think when you manipulate your brain as an actor, you start to understand how people can get swept into these horrible things when they're lonely and confused.
And Jurnee, you're terrific in this too, and she is a really interesting character to play. You know, in terms of female officer there and working with them and everything you have to do in this film. So talk about it from your point of view.
When I got the script, my agent said, so there's this character, it was originally in the script written as a man. They want to turn it into a woman, but they want to do it with the actress that takes it on. What I did after I read the script, I Googled black women in the FBI and discovered fairly quickly, if you go on the Bureau's website, they have like a whole archival of the history of women in general in the FBI. And it wasn't until the 70s that women were able to hold this position of power as a special agent. And it wasn't until 1976 that a black woman, the first black woman, was in this role, right? And so if we're in the early 1980s, one of the things we discussed is how lonely it would have been, how much the work would have consumed her, how personal it would have been. What does that wall with all that paraphernalia and racist ideology on it, how does that affect her? How does this case personally live with her, right? It was always about the person in the scenario. What are the dynamics between them? And let's bring that out.
This premiered, it had its world premiere at the Venice Film Festival. And I'm just curious what was the European reaction to this very American story? I'm curious as to what they thought of it as opposed to what we may be thinking of it.
I think this is a global issue.
Yeah.
And I think I think what's powerful about the way this story is told in the hands of Justin is that it's a period piece that resonates now. He unpacks these kind of individuals and this kind of behavior in a way that isn't good guy, bad guy. It's why. And so you look at the community around them, and I think that's a universal issue. That's a universal problem. It's easy to say this is an American issue. It is an American issue, but this is a global issue.
We all can acknowledge that while it is something that feels so relevant now, when would it not have been relevant? We still are facing kind of this real bigotry, this ideology. Yes, it's a uniquely American story, but it's still, unfortunately, very global.
It's very sad. Time magazine this week had an interview with the current president-elect who said, I'm going to, in 9 minutes, my first 9 minutes, let out all the January 6 people out of prison, you know, and it's just a different, weird time where we're looking at, they killed, you know, I mean, 5 police officers died that day and things like that. And there's a different mindset in this country. It is global, but this movie is urgent now. And so congratulations to all of you for making it and bringing it to us here tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.